Imagine you're browsing an archive as a very old book catches your eye. Out of curiosity, you open it to find an old list of city names. But oddly enough, one of the names catches your attention, as you've never heard of it before. Maybe it existed once, but it doesn't anymore. After some digging around in the archives, you narrow down where you think the city used to be, and you set off on a journey to find it. As your boat winds down a river, you end up at your destination. But all you see around you is thick jungle. Exhausted, you're ready to declare the search a failure. But then you take a second look around, and you notice under the jungle growth are ancient ruins and strange-looking relics scattered all around the jungle floor as far as you can see. This is the true story of Prince Damrong's adventure 120 years ago that led to his discovery of the lost ancient city of Si Thep, which just became Thailand's latest UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2023. It would be remembered as one of the most daring expeditions in Thailand's history. Prince Damrong, or also known as the Prince Damrong Rajanubhab, but in this video I'll just call him Prince Damrong for short. Prince Damrong was born on the 21st of June in 1862. His father was Phabat Somdet Phachom Chao Yu Hua, who was the fourth king of Siam, also known as Rama IV. And Prince Damrong's mother was Chao Jom Manda Chum, also known as Consort Chum. Prince Damrong was one of King Mongkut's many children, and Prince Damrong's older brother would actually go on to take the throne when Prince Damrong was only 9 years old. And he recalled that sometimes when he was very young, he got to go sit on the throne when his older brother wasn't there, of course. And sometimes his older brother, King Rama V, would call on his younger siblings to go take any empty seats at the dinner table. And that's when they got to enjoy ice cream, which was a very special treat at that time. Prince Damrong would start his education and also start learning English inside the royal palace. From a very young age, he had a love of history and archaeology, and he actually started learning these topics when he became a young monk at the age of 13. After that, he would go on to get an education at Longlien Nai Loi Tahan Bok, which was like a military academy. And at age 15, he would graduate and enter the civil service, eventually climbing up the ladder to the position of highest leadership in the military when he was only 19 years old. And when he turned 28, his older brother, King Rama V, would put him in charge of the education ministry. King Rama V had a very special bond with Prince Damrong, usually regarding matters of the state. Prince Damrong would usually carry out different tasks that King Rama V would hand out to him regarding the civil service duties. And he was actually so trusted by King Rama V that he was compared to a gem in the king's crown. Well, Prince Damrong was actually very good at his civil service duties. He actually started Longlien Phukhat Kalachakan Polaluang, which is a civil service school, and it would go on to become Chulalongkorn University, which is Thailand's very first university. And in addition to that, Prince Damrong also created a certain learning system that would facilitate learning to make it faster. Before then, it would usually take about 3 years for people to learn to read and write. And of course, 3 years is a long time, so a lot of people would give up. Well, when Prince Damrong came along, he created a whole new system that would take only 3 months to learn to read and write. And he also created a new learning system to learn the Thai alphabets, Ko, Kai, Kho, Kai, and so on, which students still use nowadays. When Prince Damrong was 30 years old, King Rama V had made him the head of the Ministry of Interior. And this is where Prince Damrong made one of the biggest reforms. He created the Thesa Piban system, in which the provincial administration was professionalized and made responsible to and dependent on the central government, which I won't delve into much in this video. But suffice to say, in performing his duties as the head of the Ministry of Interior, he would have to travel to the different provinces all around the country. And in his travels to each of the provinces, it wasn't a simple trip like nowadays where you could just take a plane ride or a road trip. Back then, most of the roads, if there were any at all, were dirt roads. And sometimes he actually had to travel through jungles and across mountains, kind of like an Indiana Jones character. And in performing his duties as the head of the Ministry of Interior, Prince Damrong had a personal motto. He believed that to be a good leader, you have to let your shoes rip before your pants. That is to say, you should go out and inspect so much that your shoes get torn to bits. Not just sit around all day until your pants rip. And as I mentioned before, Prince Damrong always had a love for history and archaeology. And during his trips as the head of the Ministry of Interior, he got the chance to visit many different ancient cities all around Siam. And he found many ancient ruins and ancient relics. When Prince Damrong was 42, he was still working in the Ministry of Interior. And one day he found a very old list of old capital cities, one of which was called Si Thep. But he couldn't find Si Thep on any map. So he asked around, and none of his colleagues have ever heard of Si Thep either. Later on, Prince Damrong found a black book, inside of which was an old announcement that was announcing the death of King Rama II. Now, what's interesting was that along with that announcement was instructions for someone to go spread the news along the different routes around Siam. And there was one particular route that started out in the city of Saratburi, then Chaibadan, then Si Thep, then Petchabun. According to the lay of the land, the cities are all cities that are lined along the Pasak River. Therefore, Si Thep must be around the Pasak River. But of course, Prince Damrong was swamped with duties, and he couldn't just drop everything to go search for this mysterious city. But luckily, an opportunity came up for him to travel to that very region that he suspected the lost city could be. Now, back during Prince Damrong's time, of all the different provinces in Siam that had malaria disease, Petchabun was one of the most famous. It was known back then that going to Petchabun was like going to die. However, in 1897, when Prince Damrong was around 35 years old, there was a need to go to Petchabun because one of the local positions called Puwa of the province became open. And getting someone to fill the position was like finding a needle in a haystack. Locals were plentiful, but not educated or experienced enough. And outsiders were educated and experienced, but fearful of the malaria situation in Petchabun. Prince Damrong thought to himself, I don't know how to make people stop fearing Petchabun's sickness. But Prince Damrong wasn't about to back down. According to Prince Damrong's diary, he wrote, "Seems I need to go to Petchabun myself to set an example so people will stop fearing. When people heard I was going to Petchabun, many came to give their blessings as if I was going to war. Some of them told me not to go and risk my life. I believe it isn't as bad as people fear. I've traveled to different capitals, passing through forests, even diseased areas, but I never feared." So Prince Damrong started off on his journey. He left Bangkok by boat on the 21st of January in 1904. It took 8 days for the boat ride to reach Bangmunad in the province of Phichit. From then on, he continued his trip by land. Luckily, walking around 120 kilometers through hard terrain and forests, finally arriving in Petchabun on the 4th of February. And while he was there in Petchabun, he also asked some locals if they'd heard of any ancient cities near the Sak River. The locals also talked of another ancient city that's very large, called Apaisali, which is close to Vichianburi in the Padang region, which isn't hard to reach. And according to them, there's still a Plang Prasad left. This is where the expedition for the ancient city really begins. So on the 11th of February, they started out of Petchabun by boat. But the waterway was narrow and the water level was low, and at some points there was vegetation on both sides. Navigating the Pasak River turned into a real challenge. As they sailed away from Petchabun, both sides of the river were lined by big trees that blocked out the sun's rays. They paddled by sparse houses along the river into days of nothing but forest. In the uninhabited areas, it was difficult for the boats to navigate. You see, the last heavy rainy season had caused the river to surge, causing the big trees to fall into the river, blocking the boat's path. It felt like a never-ending obstacle course. Along the Sak River, it's so uninhabited that many places along the river have no name. Prince Damrong, being the keen observer that he was, noticed animal tracks on the riverbanks, including tracks of elephants, tigers, deer, wild boar, and these animals would normally live nearby the mountains, which were a distance from the river on both sides. During the dry season, however, the animals have to come down the mountain to the river to drink. And since the river doesn't have any people there, animals like to live there during the dry season. Prince Damrong noted in his diary that the first few days on the Pasak River, though difficult, was fun. Since the team had their separate boats, with 1 to 2 people per boat, they sometimes played around. But many days passed and reality hit. They got sick of sitting all day in their cramped boats. All they could do on the small boats was either sit or lay down from morning to night until they got fatigued and developed knee pain. Some complained of feeling like they're in a casket. So they got creative, getting out to walk in areas that they could, cutting holes in their roof to make a door that they could open to stand up and see their surroundings and stretch their legs. For Prince Damrong, he was in a luxury boat, a luaking, with ample space and windows to view the surroundings. But even he was feeling body aches as well. So he ordered a special chair, kind of like a lawn chair, where he could hang his legs off of and he could lay down his back. But sometimes he was forgetful. Getting up, he would knock his head on the roof many times. With no houses in sight to rest at, they had to go by the sunlight, boating until around 4 p.m. when they'd look for a good spot to rest for the night. When night fell, they'd make a fire in a circle around them and stay within the circle, because they weren't sure what jungle creatures might be around them in the dark. But despite the challenges, the isolated jungle areas were a sight to behold. It was beautiful, with the many varieties of large and small jungle trees and the treetops filled with jungle birds, such as peacocks, that can be seen every day, and flying squirrels. After 6 days of this wild ride, they finally reach Vichian, which is where Si Thep's discovery begins. Prince Damrong wrote in his diary, "When I reached Vichianburi, I learned that the former head of the province of Vichianburi, his name was Phetchabun. He was still alive, but he couldn't come visit me due to that he was aged and disabled. So I visited him at his home. I asked about Si Thep, and Phetchabun told me that the original name of Vichianburi used to have 2 former names, which are Ta Long and Si Thep, until one day during the reign of King Rama III, when the king ordered for the former name Si Thep to be changed to Vichianburi. So Prince Damrong asked about the ancient city of Apaisali, which the locals had told him in Petchabun. พระยาประเสริฐสงคราม told Prince Damrong that there is a large ancient city, but just because the monks in the city call it Apaisali doesn't mean that that's the true name. Hearing this, Prince Damrong felt that he got all the info that he wanted about the legend of Si Thep. He thanked พระยาประเสริฐสงคราม because if it wasn't for him, the legend of Si Thep could have faded away. Filled with hope now, Prince Damrong continued his journey by boat from Vichian to Ban Na Takut, which is a village where he would have to park his boat and continue on to go to see the ancient city. Now this is where things got strange. Prince Damrong noted that when he first arrived, the locals around the area told them that they've never heard of Si Thep, and they've never heard of any ancient city or Apaisali or anything like that. It seemed like the locals were fearful of telling him about anything. Prince Damrong thought it was very strange. But he could understand that it's probably because those villagers never met anyone asking about the ancient city before. They were probably scared that he was some treasure hunter, and if they couldn't bring him there to find any treasure, that they'd be punished or something. So they thought it would just be easy to say, nope, there's nothing here. Prince Damrong had to take a long time of explaining to make them trust him. And eventually they did open up. They told Prince Damrong what they knew and agreed to lead him there. It was located about 6 kilometers from the Pasak River. The city was located on a large flat plain with moats that go all around the city. And there were many ponds there. And in the middle of the city, there were ancient ruins called Blangs. There were many other ruins, both within the city and around the city. But most importantly, he found many ancient writings that were scattered all around, because no one had gone to scavenge the ancient city here before. The villagers led Prince Damrong to the different artifacts. For the relics that were small enough to be transported, Prince Damrong had them sent down to Bangkok later, and they're now in a museum. Ever since that day that Prince Damrong discovered Si Thep, scholars, both Thai and foreigners, have been there to study the origins and decline of the city. In the next episode, we'll learn about the origins of Si Thep, who built it and why. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you get an alert when I upload my next episode. Thank you. Have a good day.